is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Mayor Brandon Johnson's recent remarks have all of a sudden got the city in legal hot water, and President Trump's Justice Department alleging racial discrimination in city hiring practice. Now, the mayor made the comments as part of a discussion with Pastor Byron Brazier at the Apostolic Church of God in Woodlawn. It was part of a broader discussion centered around what his administration was doing to build up the fortunes of black Chicago residents whose average incomes are vastly smaller than white Chicagoans. Johnson said part of it was hiring more people of color in his office.
Business and Economic Neighborhood Development, the deputy mayor is a black woman. The Department of Planning and Development is a black woman. Infrastructure, deputy mayor is a black woman. Chief Operations Officer is a black man. Budget director is a black woman. Senior advisor is a black man. And I'm laying that out because when you ask how do we ensure that our people get a chance to grow their business, having people in my administration that will look out for the interest of everyone, and everyone means you have to look out for the interest of black folks.
Now, the investigation announced this afternoon from the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice started with a letter addressed to the mayor. Assistant Attorney General wrote in part, quote, "Considering these remarks, I have authorized an investigation to determine whether the city of Chicago is engaged in a pattern or practice of discrimination." The letter continues to read, "If these kinds of hiring decisions are being made for top-level positions in your administration, then it begs the question whether such decisions are also being made for lower-level positions." Now, the lawsuit cites Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that prohibits hiring discrimination on the basis of race. Now, that title and the entire act was written with the discrimination of African Americans and other populations of color in mind back in 1964, but the Trump administration has made it clear with attacks on DE&I programs and now this lawsuit, he feels the shoe is on the other foot. Now, the lawsuit leaves out some of Mayor Johnson's other comments, namely that 34% of his administration is black, 23% Hispanic, and 30% white, which reflects the racial makeup of a city that is approximately one-third black, white, and Latino. And if the DOJ is so interested in discrimination based on race, why doesn't it mention the racial wealth gap in this country? According to a report from the Brookings Institution, it's growing, and the average white family has more than $240,000 more wealth than the average black family. Now, for every $15 of wealth for the median black family, white families have $100. Now, let's stipulate, hiring solely on the basis of race is against the law. How does the DOJ prove, however, that the candidates Mayor Johnson hired were somehow less qualified than white candidates? The bottom line, another lawsuit against Chicago is certainly like shark chum to Trump's base and surely liable to garner lots of ratings in some of the conservative media outlets. But how does it move the country toward color blindness or racial reconciliation? Mayor Johnson's comments are divisive and polarizing. And now Trump's Justice Department will do nothing but ensure more divisiveness and more polarization.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
The deputy mayor is a black woman. The Department of Planning and Development is a black woman.
Mayor Johnson's comments in a church Sunday spark a civil rights investigation from Trump's Department of Justice. Tens of thousands of Illinois immigrants are at risk of losing health coverage under the governor's budget proposal. We debate the issue. Plus, the Trump administration promises to marshal the full resources of the federal government to keep those pesky Asian carp out of Lake Michigan. And new Mayor Mondays, we sit down with the newly inaugurated mayor of the state's second largest city, Aurora, who says he has inherited a mess.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
And welcome to Paris on Politics, where we go behind the headlines and beyond the spin for some more perspective on this civil rights investigation announced against the city of Chicago. We're joined by IIT Kent College of Law Professor Harold Krent. Professor Krent, always good to see you. Is it unusual to have such swift action from the DOJ 24 hours after comments were made that the administration is now basing this investigation on?
It's incredibly unusual, and that's one slew that this is mostly show as opposed to a legitimate civil rights investigation. Obviously, the mayor was touting the fact that he has a diverse workforce and heads of his departments. But diversity by itself is not a violation, thank God, of the civil rights statutes. And so the Department of Justice, to win, would ultimately have to determine that there was a pattern and practice of illegal discrimination in terms of hiring for positions within the city. I don't think they have close to that information now. If they get it, that's a different situation.
Well, and this is a pattern and practice investigation, so it's not a traditional lawsuit. They're not necessarily taking the city to court. So what does this entail, and what would be the outcome of it?
Well, right now, as you said, it's an internal investigation. So there will be people asked for hiring records, asked for notes that were taken during the interviews, and they'll make an assessment based upon that information. But again, just the fact that there is a diversity in no way suggests that there's a pattern and practice of discrimination under Title VII, which is in the Civil Rights Act enacted in 1964. So we have a long way to go. My hunch is this is just sort of, atmospherics, but we'll see.
All right, Harold Krent, IIT, Kent College of Law. Always great to get your perspective. Thanks very much.
Good to see you, Paris.
You as well. And moving on, tens of thousands of undocumented residents in Illinois are in danger of losing health coverage. That's because the governor has proposed slashing the program amid a major budget shortfall and ballooning costs that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle now say are getting out of control. But advocates for the program say the cost of kicking people off insurance could prove to be greater.
Ahmed is a grocery store worker originally from Jordan who has been applying for his green card. He suffers from diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease, and receives insurance through the state's Health Care for Immigrant Adults program. Governor Pritzker and Illinois lawmakers have proposed cutting the program in this year's budget because the costs have ballooned to upwards of $1 billion. Ahmed is one of more than an estimated 30,000 beneficiaries that could lose medical and prescription drug coverage.
I can't purchase my treatment, and it's gonna my health it's gonna be worstly impacted.
Rana Al-Kalani is a case manager with Arab American Family Services. Budget problems or not, she says, cutting the program is a matter of life and death.
This is ridiculous, in my opinion, because when they cut this insurance, they're gonna affect so many individuals' life.
Republicans and now many Democrats say that providing benefits to undocumented residents takes away resources from U.S. citizens. Ahmed said he fears that deteriorating health will make it harder for him to take care of his family.
They depend on me, and without this coverage, not only would my health be at serious risk, but my family's well-being would also suffer. Losing this support would be devastating for all of us.
The service is set to end June 30th. Al-Kalani says she hopes lawmakers change course before then and find the funds to continue the program.
When I heard that the program might be shut down, I felt anxious and afraid for my family's future.
And joining us to discuss the plan further are State Senator Graciela Guzman, a Democrat from Chicago, and State Representative Travis Weaver, a Republican from downstate Pekin. Thank you both for being here. First, you know the state's budget issues right now. Can the state find money to keep this program going, as some estimates say it's costed upwards of $1 billion?
I'd argue that it is our state's imperative to find this money. One, HBIA and HBIS, the program for seniors, a parallel program, have saved the state $65 million since the inception in 2021. We also have to remember immigrant spending power, $8.6 billion in 2021 alone, right? So the argument here is not only does it save our healthcare system's money, it also puts money back in our state system, because these are folks that work. They are our neighbors, they are our loved ones. ones, they are making contributions to the state of Illinois. It is our imperative to find that.
Representative Weaver, the governor and Democrats are now echoing what Republicans have said from the beginning, that the state can't afford this. What about Senator Guzman's point that it puts money back in pockets and it helps the economy?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just say to Ahmed and Rana, that's the first time I'd heard their stories. My heart goes out to him. It's so tragic to hear those situations. But I don't really think that this is a philosophical difference that Senator Guzman and I have, because I think we actually need to take a step further back from that. Because in February, the Auditor General released a report stating that there was hundreds of millions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse associated with this program from people that have Social Security numbers and were depending on it, and they're actually not supposed to be a part of it because they're here legally, they're citizens, they're not who the program was intended for. So I think we need to stop this immediately. It actually should have been stopped back in February once that Auditor General's report came out, until we know that there's no waste, fraud, and abuse. Then once that's cleared up, we can have the philosophical debate about whether it's right or wrong to spend this money, but we should not be spending money on a wasteful project.
All right, Senator Guzman, what about that Auditor General report? Is there hundreds of thousands of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse? Millions of dollars?
As you can imagine, our Medicaid system is very complex, so is immigration status. And so it's entirely possible that someone, to Rep. Weaver's point, has a social security number, but is actually not a citizen, is not a legal permanent resident, but is simply in their process of gaining status. So the audit did find the complexities of our immigration system. Healthcare and Family Services has done an immense amount of work on top of the cost containment measures to help lower the cost of this program. We've still got work to do, but I think we can't throw out the bathwater with the baby, right? We have people that need this care now. They are our neighbors, they are our loved ones, they are our working economy. We need to continue this life-saving care.
All right, and let me play a clip from the CEO of Cook County Hospital, who basically said that cutting off this insurance would mean more people in the emergency room. Take a look.
As people lose coverage, we're going to potentially see, instead of, managing high blood pressure or diabetes, we're now treating strokes and heart attacks.
Representative Weaver, you said once the waste, fraud, and abuse is ironed out, we could talk about the philosophical debate. So say that does get ironed out. Where do you stand on the philosophical debate? Should folks that don't have documentation receive some kind of insurance?
Yeah, the answer for me is still no, and especially at the way that our budget sits in 2025, where the majority party is suggesting taxing services. So this is things like haircuts, nail salons, people that mow your lawn, typical services that we all enjoy now having to tax, which means that not only the regular taxpayer, but also the small business owner. I mean, think about these all-American startup jobs. Mowing lawns was the first job for so many people, now becoming taxed so that we can pay the health care for people that are here fully illegally. I just have a problem with that philosophically. If we had a robust budget year, I would love for us to have more services that we can provide for people. The reality is that the situation that we're in 2025, where we're taxing services, something we've never done before, so that we can pay for health care for illegal immigrants, is something that I have an issue with.
Senator Guzman, I know the Latino caucus is fighting to get this back into the budget as Governor Pritzker's proposed cutting it. Are there sources of revenue that you can point to that might help fund it?
I think across the General Assembly, there's a diversity of opinions. I mean, personally, I know for myself, I'm trying to advance measures around progressive revenue, as are many of my colleagues, right? Because I think at the end of the day, we don't want to balance this budget on working class people. I don't want to see regressive taxes. But I also know that communities across our state have various needs, from this program called HBIA to after-school prevention money, violence prevention money, homeless prevention dollars. We are in a situation where our communities have immense need, and revenue needs to be one of the sources, to Rep. Weaver's point, that we bring to the table to bring solutions to our community that so desperately have need right now.
Representative Weaver, what about hospitals like Cook County and others downstate in rural areas that now will have to turn to charity care as folks without insurance in greater numbers turn up in the emergency room? Couldn't that end up costing more?
I would love to see the math on it. I haven't really dug into this specifically. I haven't heard from my local hospitals that would happen. If that's going to happen here in the city of Chicago and the city of Chicago supports it, I'd encourage Mayor Johnson to look into it, because the reality is at the state level, we're pretty tapped out, right? We have the worst credit rating in the entire nation, $180 billion in pension debt, property taxes that cripple so many of our citizens. At some point, we've got to decide we're not broke because we tax too little. We're broke because we spend too much.
All right, really quickly, Senator Guzman, are there votes to to block the budget if it doesn't include this?
I think that we still have less than 2 weeks to go in the budget. Our Latino caucus and other folks have been in negotiations. And I think to Rep. Weaver's point, we have to remember this is a statewide issue. We have 33,000 enrollees across multiple counties, not just in Cook County. Cook County system alone, you heard it today, they will suffer some decreases in terms of what they're expecting. $110 million is their expected loss. But what we know is almost every single hospital in the state of Illinois saw a decrease between 15% and 28% for bad debt simply from having health benefits for immigrant adults. It's a program worth investing in, and I urge every member of the General Assembly to look into it.
I do have to leave it there. Senator Guzman, Representative Weaver, thank you for making the trip here, especially you, Representative Weaver, all the way from Pekin.
I know.
Pleasure.
Great to have you up here in Chicago. John Lesh took over for two-term Republican incumbent Richard Irvin last week. We sat down with Lesh at Aurora's Society 57 Cafe, where he told me the first job is to clean up a financial mess that he says Irvin left him.
I've taken some early steps by canceling and saying we are not doing the City of Lights Center, which was a $124 million but underestimated project. That did not include the parking garage and a bunch of the land purchases and so forth for that project. So there's some steps that we've taken. We're finding more ways to cut back, and meetings with the economic development team have also revealed that there's more or less a house of cards propping up, using taxpayer dollars to prop up a lot of businesses. About half of the deals that were done through Invest Aurora appear to be on shaky ground or in default. Or have already gone to court for settlement.
So this is a public-private agency that gave incentives to these businesses, and these businesses are not sustainable, you're saying?
Correct. So the loans are made under Invest Aurora, but that group has since been merged into a new group called the Alliance, which includes Chambers of Commerce, the Aurora Downtown. I have yet to meet with the leader of the Alliance, her name is Kelly, and to try and flesh out a solution in the future for that organization if we choose that it should continue to exist. But right now it's just looking at sort of the economic impact and trying to do what we can to chart a path towards more sustainable development.
How do you, when you look at all the debt the town faces, how do you craft a budget and get back into fiscal stability? Does that mean maybe property tax hikes have to happen to make up for that?
So generally when you go out to bond, you have to tell the lender that you're going to have some money to pay that bond off, and generally it is tied to a property tax increase. I let the public know that that was a likely outcome. I'm going to do my best to cut back where we can, but as I just articulated, some of these are contracts that are signed in more or less a done deal.
And you talk about these businesses, you know, there are a lot of businesses here downtown. You probably don't want to see it hollowed out. So how do you keep these businesses going on their own?
We're going to have to work creatively to find creative solutions. Some of them, I think there's somewhat of a little bit of an oversaturation. We have a number of coffee shops. Some are struggling because we just don't have the number of people and customers to support and provide enough foot traffic. Definitely we want to see everybody that's made an investment in the downtown succeed. That would be a goal, but we're going to have to look at some very creative solutions to make that happen.
You know, this is the second biggest city in Illinois. When you take over a job like this and you realize you're responsible for 180,000 people and businesses and industry, can you describe the weight of that?
It's significant, but I'm not panicking. We didn't get into this mess overnight, and we aren't going to get out of it overnight. I've got a lot of support from the community. They know that we're in trouble, and I think that they're going to be patient as I work through some solutions, as long as I continue to communicate openly with the community about where we're at, and I plan to be very open and transparent as we move forward.
President Trump gave a big reassurance to Illinois and other Great Lakes states that it will provide federal resources to keep Asian carp away. The president signed an executive order giving Illinois the green light to move forward on the consequential Brandon Road Dam project in Joliet. And joining me now is Ethan Baker, chair of the Great Lakes Fishery Commission and mayor of Troy, Michigan. Mayor Ethan Baker, thanks for joining us. So first of all, remind us how close right now are Asian carp to Lake Michigan?
they're way too close. I don't even want to talk about a miles. I just want to say they are absolutely way too close. But it's truly a matter of miles, and it's terrifying to think of what it could do to our fishing industry and the fishery as a whole in the Great Lakes.
All right, well then give us a glimpse into what the consequences would be.
Well, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, for those who've been paying attention, they recognize that all of us who care so deeply about the Great Lakes fishery and all the ecological aspects of our Great Lakes, the Asian carp as an invasive species can have catastrophic damage to the things that we know and love best about the Great Lakes, whether that's recreation or, more importantly, whether that's about an industry that is a $5.1 billion fishery industry in the Great Lakes. Tons of jobs related to that, obviously a huge economic impact. So that Asian carp coming into those lakes is absolutely something that we all must focus on. And, not just the great states of Michigan and Illinois, but I'm part of the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, chair of that commission, and that's an international organization between Canada and the United States, because obviously we share these lakes. It has effects through the 8 Great Lakes states into the province of Ontario and Canada. It's a huge deal.
And President Trump in the White House said that it was a priority of theirs. They are going to provide the federal resources to keep Asian carp out, specifically to start the project on the Brandon Road Lock and Dam in Joliet. What would that project do? How effective would that be, that dam?
Well, that project, the Brandon Road project, is the #1 biggest, most effective project in the making right now for Asian carp. And it's going to, like so many invasive species, when, the Mississippi River was connected with Lake Michigan to the Illinois Canal, it created the waterway, it created a situation where it allowed, species that weren't supposed to be in our Great Lakes the opportunity to go. Brandon Road Dam obviously has been there for nearly 100 years. But the problem is, these Asian carp are moving up, and they're just about to breach and go in there, and it's so dangerous. So I'm really thankful that President Trump has, taken this as seriously as he has. The one thing I found really interesting about our Great Lakes as serving as chair and definitely as a mayor in a city in Michigan is that the Great Lakes are a great bipartisan treasure. Republicans, Democrats, independents, everybody in between, they will work together to ensure that our Great Lakes are protected, whether it's the fishery, whether it's the ecology, whether it's the recreational aspect of it. So this is a wonderful thing, and Brandon Road is going to solve a lot of these problems, hopefully, and be a model of how we can move forward. It's a $1.3 billion project, but that $1.3 billion project over 3 phases, which now has been, pushed forward even faster by the federal government, they're going to protect a $5.1 to $6 billion fishery in the Great Lakes. I mean, it's an investment that is well worth it.
Not to mention the ecology of the lakes and the ecosystem and how Asian carp have upset that. They're not that bad to eat. I have to say, I've eaten a couple of them. But Mayor Ethan Baker, go ahead.
The problem is, they would decimate the other wonderful fish we have in our Great Lakes, much like the sea lamprey did back 70+ years ago, which actually was the reason the Great Lakes Fishery Commission was formed. So, I mean, these invasive species, they move so fast, they populate and they spawn so fast. Our regular lake trout, our whitefish, can't keep up.
Yeah, and not to mention they leap pretty high out of the water. All right, Mayor Ethan Baker, thanks for joining us, and we'll keep following this. Appreciate it.